So, today is Intro to Structures. So, warning label right here is, this is not a theological class, this is a practical class. If you want to find it in the Bible, learn the concept and then go looking for it. You'll find it for yourself. The other thing is, the way I talk about this subject can sound very deep or very layered. Don't let yourself say that that's too deep, because then you'll just put it on a shelf and never touch it again. Allow yourself to process the words that are being used, okay? And the third one is, this stuff is all very practical. From the words you speak, to the pictures you see, to the billboard on the side of the road, every bit of what I'm saying is being used constantly. The way I'm going to say it is going to sound mystical. It's going to sound very New Agey, for the lack of better words. But the New Age has been practicing it. Christians have been practicing it. Every cross around everyone's neck is a structure. So we're going to go through things. We're going to take this one slow as a very foundational teaching, and we'll come back and layer on it with other classes, okay? So, everyone good so far? Okay, so everyone in the room I know is mature. Those who are watching later, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, watch it again, please. Comment sections are great. I'll watch for comments and answer any questions you guys have for later on. So, without further ado, let's get started. So we know in Hebrews 11, verses 1 and 3, that it says, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the convictions of things not seen. By faith we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen is made..." Let me rephrase. What is seen was not made out of things that are visible. And what that means is, we know that things that are created are not made out of visible, tangible things, but that they are made out of a substance that we can't see. And by faith, we understand this. So how is that made? We know that the world and all of creation is held together by the word of God. And we know by faith, which, let's get a working definition of faith. Faith is belief of the heart mixed with intention of the soul and the action of the body. So without works, faith is dead. Without intention, what are you using your faith for? It's an empty shell. And without the belief, that intention has nothing to hold it within. So it's a three-layered substance of faith. And there's plenty of other teachings on faith for how to activate it, how to use it, all that stuff. But what we need for today is to understand that faith is intention, belief, and action. Okay? Everyone got that? Okay. So, the faith of God created all things through the structure of his voice. This is where we're going to start getting into the structure part of things. So, let me not get ahead of myself. Genesis 1 through 4. I don't have a slide for it, but it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was. And God saw that it was good." Paraphrase, Johnny Edition. Trademark. But by that we know that faith was the internal idea that God wanted to create. God had an idea inside himself. So then he had to form, because at that point there was no language, there were no letters, there were no sounds, there was just God. So within himself, he created an image of what he wanted to create. He had an intention of creation. Then he put belief that he could create these things. He could do that. He fashioned himself a full image and held it. Just like a painter paints a picture, but before he ever paints that picture in the real world, he has to paint it in his mind. So we got this image of God creating, and it's very nebulous, very without form and void. And his spirit hovering over the face of the deep. And it's like a word without letters. It's a concept without verbalization, without being expressed correctly. So it's just a nebulous. It's dark. It's not revealed yet. And darkness was over the face of the deep. And then God said. So before God could say, he had to form what we know as the living letters. So he framed those intentions to take shape through the word. By the words, all things are held together. By the word of his power, all things are upheld. There's plenty of scriptures through the Bible where the word is what holds the universe together. John 1, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. Hebrews 1, I forgot to write it down, but it talks about the preeminence of Christ, where by the word he formed the things, and that through Christ all things were made. And then this one's not biblical, it's an extra biblical. But there's a book called the Sephir Yetzerah, which is a Hebrew writing. Some say it's yes, no, maybe so. Take it with a grain of salt. Have the maturity to pick up what you need. But what it is it's a book of formation is what that name translates to. And it talks about how God created the numbers, God created the letters, how he used them to frame out direction, east, west, north, south, what names he gave to each one. So it goes through step by step what elements were made, how heaven was created, how earth was created, and it just steps. So if you're interested in structures, that's a good place to get an idea of how things were put together. And that's the Sephir Yetzerah. If you need spelling, let me know, and I can, or Google will show it to you too. But like I like to say, God made alphabet soup in the beginning. We had the face of the deep, and he put all of his intentions, it says he hovered over the deep, over the face of the water. So he's vibrating with the waters. He's giving that intention to the waters. We know that water holds an imprint of what's next to it. So if you have a water that's been sitting in the sunlight and a water that's been sitting in the shade, and you put them together on the kitchen table, the image of the sunlight that's held in the water will transfer into the crystals in the water that's been in the shade. It imprints. We have a word imprinting, where the image of one goes into the image of the other. And that's what water does, is it holds and it releases. It takes on other forms depending on what it's needed for. So God made alphabet soup. Then he stirred it around until he got the words that he needed. And he started to use the living letters. Each letter is an image, it's a number, it's a sound, it's all of these things together. That's what we're using in structure, it's a vehicle of manifestation. It's a way to take your intention, what's inside of you, the emotion, all of your inward stuff, and express it in the manifest world. Does that make sense? Okay. So he animated the intentions of his heart through the container of the word by filling it with the letters and the sound, with the breath, by filling the letters and sound with the breath of his spirit. The word spirit is breath. It's the outflowing of the inward. It's, if you take a deep breath in, it's inspiration, inspiriting, and aspiration, expiration, exhaling, giving the spirit out into the world. So the breath is that inward and outward move. It's the expression of the self-being. And we know that, again, the Trinity is what we're talking about here with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The breath of God, the Word of God, Jesus. Him being the Word, the manifest being of the invisible God. So, as God made a shell of a man, he filled it with his Spirit and his intention of bringing him to earth. And that's why Jesus was fully God and fully man. So Jesus is a structure of God. Does that make sense? Kind of like a blueprint is the intention to build a building, but the building is the manifestation of that blueprint. Am I making sense so far? Okay. I want to make sure I'm not just rambling. Okay. So this is the foundation of the structures and their application. It's to have an intention, an inward thought, and to put it out into the world, to manifest that inward intention, the will. So, again, this is not a theological class. This is an application class. So every word that you speak, if you fill it with intention, it has more weight. If you speak it just speaking it, it doesn't have that weight. Every picture you paint has a good image, but until you put the emotion and the connection with what you're painting through the brush, it's just another pretty picture. It's that whole idea of a structure is a building, but you put the people in it to give it its meaning. You can build a church with a steeple on top, and it'll look like a church. But until you have the people inside, it's not actually taking form. It's not actually a church. It's just a building. The structure is the church. The intention is the people. I'm using the word intention. It's your willpower. It's your emotions. It's the substance of your being that you're using in that. That's why when one person plays a song and another person plays a song, the songs sound completely different, even though they're hitting the exact same melody. They're hitting the same. It's because of what's coming out of the player, not coming out of the instrument. That's why one set of flags and another set of flags can look exactly the same, but they flag completely different. They fly. One stirs up the atmosphere, the other one breaks down the atmosphere so that more can move. It's not about the flags. It's about what you're using them for. So, I mean, we see pentagrams everywhere, especially at Halloween, which we just passed. But there's at least 5 different interpretations of the same pentagram. You have the Wiccans, you have the Middle Eastern medicine, you have the Middle Eastern mysticism. Those are 2 different things. You have the Native Americans' use of it. You have, there's so many different uses of it. And even the pagans have 2 different uses of it, whether it's one side up or one side down. So it's a tool. It's not about the image of it. It's about the intention of what meaning you give to it. So I'm getting ahead of myself again. Well, not too far. A structure is a vehicle of manifestation. Just like a car, you need gas and you need a driver. You need the intention to drive, which is your driver. You need the emotions and the will to manifest it, which is the gas in the tank. You have to have all of the parts or it won't work perfectly. This can be a word, a sound, a visual element, objects, colors, a symbol. We use, like I said before, a cross. Everyone knows what a cross is when it pertains to Christianity. But when you ask a Jew what a cross is, it's death. It's like wearing an electric chair around you. So it depends on the context of the person interpreting what that symbol means. That's why I'm not a big fan of dream interpretation anymore. It's because the second you start interpreting it for someone else, their meaning now gets jumbled. And the second you give meaning to a symbol, it now loses a lot of layers that could be down here. So there's merit to one, but you're also taking away from future. A mystery is meant to reveal itself. But that's for a later class. Okay. So just on the sound part of this, I want to show you a quick video of what exactly sound does just in the numbers and frequencies. So, little explanation on that video. The reason I showed that was because every letter, every breath that we use for language carries a frequency and a resonance. The reason I showed you this was because the structure of a sound is in a wave, the highs and the lows, the pitch, words. The highs and lows. So whenever you're seeing an image like this, what's happening is that plate is going at the frequency of that sound, and the sand is falling into the lows, and the highs are pushing it into that dip, into the hills and the valleys. So when you're speaking, when you're doing things, especially prayer, what you're wanting to do is to match the frequency of what God is saying. And what you don't want to do is go exactly 180 degrees opposite of it. Because just like the hills and valleys cause a sound, if you flatten it all out by putting the opposite hills in where the valleys are, that's where we get noise canceling like our headphones. Because it just takes that sound and inverts it so that it now has a flat line. Does that make sense? So whenever you're praying opposite of something, you're canceling it out physically. So if I take your voice and I play it back while you're speaking, inverted, the same words, same inflection, everything, wherever it matches up exactly, it'll be silence because your ears won't read it. So that's the structure of a sound. Now, whenever we, in our mystic stuff, start talking about like the name of God, the different names of God, each holds a separate sound. Each holds, and the combination of the letters that go into it dictate that sound. So one example is, whenever we come to the Hebrew letters, we have a sound, which is how you form it in your mouth. We have a picture, which is the symbolism of each letter. And we have a number. The number corresponds with all three so that you can find the pattern. It's kind of like the foundation of it all. So just like we say that math is how we prove everything, the number that's associated with it shows you the patterns and the correlations of that particular thing. So whenever you're looking at the name of God, you can look at each of those letters and the numbers that correspond to them, and you can see a pattern within creation so that you know where that name shows up. So let's just walk through it. We have Yod, which is the picture of a hand, an outstretched hand. The symbolism usually means either works, a hand of power, an uplifting hand. The right hand is usually the hand that you use to grab things, to work with, to do all these things with. And it's the number 10. Whenever we see the number 10, usually it's a governmental thing because it's the working council. It's the working this, the working that. It's the primary numbers that we use to dictate all of our numbers going forward. We have the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, powers of 10. Whenever we get to the next letter, which is He. He is the symbol of a man with his arms raised, like he's exclaiming something. It's an expression of behold, or to get attention of, or to express. And its number is 5. This is why we see the pentagram a lot, because in the Eastern mysticism, you have 5 elements that make up creation. You have earth, wind, fire, and water. And then they also add spirit, or the unseen. Or they add wood or steel, which is conductors of the unseen. It's some kind of form of life. So the He is the expression, the outward going. You also see it in grace, because grace is an expression of love. The next letter is Vav. Vav is one of my favorites, only because it's connected to man, and everywhere that man shows up is a connecting point. It's a picture of a tent hook. It's an anchor. It's a connection. It's a straw, so that things can go up and down through that point. It's like a lightning rod. But the reason I like it is because 6 is a big number. It's everywhere. You have 6 sides of a cube. You have 6. There's all kinds of 6s. There's also 666, which is the number of man, not the number of the beast. I've got to clarify that, because the number of the beast was taken, but it was specifically said that it was a number of man, if you can calculate it. So that's a whole nother thing. It's not a bad number. But the picture of it is a tent peg. It's an anchor point. But whenever God made man, he made him as an anchor point between God and creation. So he is the ultimate structure for God to influence creation through. He's that lightning rod. God is the lightning. Earth is the earth. We're the connecting point. So that's why I always like 6, because it's a point of contact. So those are 3 letters, but there's 4 letters in the name of God. Yod He Vav He, Yahweh, that we know. So you have the Yod, the upstretched arm, the strong arm of the Lord. You have the He, expressed. The Vav, coming down, creation, is the lowering or the anchoring, and the expression down here. So you have the two He's, the one above, the one below. You have God up here and the connecting point, the man down here. You have God expressed in man's expression. You have, man is the expression of God's expression. Because God is love. Love is always an expression. Light is always an expression. Those things cannot be held within itself. Because light contained in itself is not light, it's darkness. It's not revealed. But whenever you reveal a light, it's expressed. So, one of the practices we always do with the name of God, and there's several other ministries that do it, there's several other people that know about it. And this is not strictly a Christian thing, because anyone can do it. But whenever you see the Yod He Vav He, it's often referred to as the Tower of God. So, the Tower of God. Yod He Vav He. You start in the east, you go Yod. West, or not west, south, you just go around saying each letter. And what you're doing is you're building a structure of the name of God so that you can be in the name. So in the name of God, in the name of Yeshua. So Yeshua is adding a shin, which is one of the later letters, to the name of God in the center. So that's one of the common structures we use. But in the mystical, you can do other names of God. You can add things to this. So you can build a structure, and then you can add a wall of fire. You can add a wall of water. Each one of those, the fire is cleansing, is purification. The water is to hold that record, to wash things clean, to purify. The earth is creation itself. It vibrates. It holds a memory. It is that. Engage it for yourself and find out. I'm trying to be good. But that's what it is. So where we get this is Proverbs 18:10, which is, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and they are saved. So you want peace from your situation. You want salvation. This is the name you run to. But there's more to it than that. Because you start tracing out the lines, you can do a whole diagram. That's what later on I'll show you. Is I've done some diagrams of this. There's a lot more there, and it looks really scary, but if you know what you're doing, it's really cool. So, let me skip past. We're back up to there. Is everyone getting it so far? Okay. Okay. Do I need to repeat anything so far? All good? That smirk. Save questions for later. If I need to repeat something, let me know now. But, okay. So, structures can also be visual. I've talked a lot about the word and the sound aspect of it. But, just like this Rubik's Cube right here, it's visual. You look at this one first, and you look at that one second, and you think, problem solved. That it's all come together. But if you look at it backwards, something's now out of whack. The context of the visual tells you what the meaning is, because one is solved, one is not. That's just one meaning. But you also look at, again, layers, cubes. One cube is this way, one cube is that way. That quarter turn. So you come up to a fountain that's got a cube and it's going like this. What does that mean? It means that things are shifting in and out of alignment, so that what's out of alignment can come into alignment, and what's in alignment, the wrong things, can come out of alignment and be realigned. And then you have the water, which is purification. So there's what you see just like in front of the Wall Street, the giant bull. What does that mean? In front of the financial, it's a bull market. It's coming up because the bull gores up, where a bear comes down. That's why they have the bull and the bear market. So you always want the bull market. That's why it's out in front of the trading center. So there's things like that. A lot of the statues, a lot of the paintings of the saints have their hands in certain positions because the way your hand is a whole language to itself. So the different pictures you see, different depictions of different things, all have symbolism hidden in it. So when you understand the language and the context of your understanding determines the context of the visual that you're seeing. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is one of my favorites, the Post-it notes. The ones in the room have had experience with this one because it was when I was learning how to do this stuff. And all it was is I wasn't feeling great one day, and I had a Post-it note. I'm learning this stuff. I'm like, I wonder if it works. So actually first I was trying to make a phone charger because I was learning this stuff and I had all of this diagram. And I was putting my phone at one end and trying to charge it with intention alone. There's more that goes into a phone charger than just power, I found out. So that wasn't working. So I'm like, okay, let's try simplifying. Let's do something. And I was a little frustrated because of the last experiment. So I'm like, okay, let's do something easy. I need to balance out what I'm feeling. So I'm like, okay, I know that in the human body, there are energy points and there's an energy flow. That's just how things work. If you want to find out more, later. But don't go looking for that one. That gets way weird. So I'm like, okay. So we have, in the center, we have, a lot of people know it as the Yin and Yang. I see it as positive, negative, polarity, charge, however you want to call it. So I have a vortex going through it, so that's spinning. And then I have a line to direct it all. And that's all it is it's just an arrow. And how we used this was, we made two of them, one going out, one coming in, and you put it in your hands. And it was funny to watch people because I wouldn't tell them what it was. I'd put it in their hands and be like, close your eyes and see what happens. And they'd be swaying. And as soon as you put it in their hands, they'd go straight up and down. Then you turn it and they start swaying again. Then you turn it inward, both arrows going inwards, and they go whoop. And you turn it back out and they balance back out. And it was just like everything was straight up because that energy flow and all of everything that's coming in and everything that needs to get out gets out. And it just kind of, it straightens you out. Sometimes more violently than others, depending on how much you need it. But we still have a few of them that keep the Post-it notes. But it was funny to watch, but it also made an impression on me because it was the simplest thing. Because all I did was I had an intention in my heart that I wanted to balance out the energy flow in my body. And I'm like, okay, how would I do this visually? I have an arrow. Okay, what symbolizes energy to me? The body energy. The positive and negative. The negative needs to go out, the positive needs to come in. And it's just that simple. And then it's all a matter of one coming in and one going out so that you have a circuit going. And it's not hard. It's practical. But it's the same idea with a lot of things. You put one magnet in one hand, polarized one way, and you put it the other way in your other hand, it'll do the same thing, as long as your intentions match. So that's the idea of a structure, is to visualize, to express, to use by activating it. So there are structures. I hope I'm not going too long. There are structures that are for storing energy, and there are structures for actions. There's also structures for storing information, like secret codes. We see this a lot in museums or in places with let's say hidden societies or other things like that, where it's a big thing going around YouTube and Facebook where people are debunking all this hidden stuff that's within all of these words and advertisements and stuff. It's all been there. It's used because subliminally, we see that language and we understand it without consciously understanding it. And our brain is triggered. So that's why you see the word sex in a lot of things. Because our brain goes, oh, I want some of that. That's why you see a lot of bad images in a lot of things. Because subconsciously, our monkey brain, if you want to call it that, goes, I want that. So that's why they use it. It's not to whitewash everything necessarily. It's because it's good advertising. It's effective. Sometimes they do it because it's a joke and they're animators. They get bored in the dark room. But anyways, so structures can be used for an effect, like these. We have other ones that we use a lot. But you'd be surprised at what you can do with paramagnets. I mean, it doesn't take a lot. Some of them, I use pieces of paper all the time. If you ever watch my notebook for Sunday mornings, it's always some kind of doodle. Because I can't write in words and keep my thoughts straight. But if I'm listening, I can doodle. And it keeps all of that contained in that. So when I look at it, I can recall. So if you're visual, work that way. But if you're verbal, use an audio recorder. Use these other tools that we have. Because all these are our tools. Okay. So this is that one I was saying. Looks a little sketchy, but it's not. I made it myself. Of course, that's not saying much, but for those online, you'll get that joke when you meet me. Okay, so this is what I call the Stargate. This I made some Friday or Saturday, I can't remember which. And what it is I was mapping out the throne room because I was trying to visualize how to get there, how to ascend and descend. Because I was hearing that I was supposed to be doing that. So why not figure out how to do that? So what it is, let's break it down real simple. Outside rim is all the living letters. I know that all of creation is built on the voice of God and that He uses these sounds to map things out. I also know that the symbolism gets you places that you wouldn't go naturally. So I use it as stair steps or a wall or a ring. That's why it's a circle around, so that you have that contained within the voice of God. The next step is in the throne room. In Revelation, we know that there are beings that are constantly crying out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. Blessing and honor, glory and power to His name forever." So I'm coming into His gates with thanksgiving and praise and beholding the holiness of God. That's what that is about. The next one is, I am made of creation. I want to take my body with me. So the triangles are another language for the elements. So we have the one with the line going up is air. The one with the line going down is earth. The one without the line going down is water. The one without the line going up is fire. So it's an alchemical thing. It's where we get a lot of our symbols for like the planets and the elements and things like that. That's how we use it. So you'll see these a lot in tattoos because people like them. And then around in the squares are the Tower of God. How we were saying you go east, west, and all of that. That's why they're jumbled, is because as you turn around, they form different words, different structures. So that's what that is coming into the Tower of God with my body and having the elements as well and what those elements symbolize. So the fire, again, purification, air, spirit, water, that other purification of the physical form. Because the Bible says that whenever they're talking about purifying the elements of the tabernacle, it says, that which can pass through the fire, let it pass through. That which cannot withstand the flame, let it pass through water for purification. So that's the idea that I use. So that's why we have a baptism of water and we have a baptism of fire. The baptism of water is to clean our physical being. The baptism of fire is to clean out all the rest of the junk and to purify us to the point that we can see God. The second one is optional, but I would suggest you do it. I mean, if you can stand the heat, get in the kitchen. But that's neither here nor there. That's a whole nother teaching. And then the internal. This is the sketchy part that everyone gets weirded about because it's all stars and shapes and weird lines and stuff. But it's just in the Sephir Yetzerah that I talked about earlier, it talks about how God created space, which is he formed and framed the directions and up and down. So you have north, south, east, west, and then all of the combinations in between. The outside is two squares overlapping each other, which if you start looking at sacred geometry, all of that fun jazz, again, not scary, just shapes, but you understand the meaning of it because squares are four. Four is the cardinal directions, the elements, the angels, the archangels. There's four that we commonly see. There's more than that, but later. You have the four faces of God. There's a lot of fours, and all of those are structures of expression. So God expresses himself in four ways, through us, through Jesus, through the Spirit, through himself. Or through, anyways. And then in the middle you have the Shin, which is, again, symbolism. Those are mainly for me because the Shin is a symbol of Christ. So if Christ is in the center, then I know I am safe because I'm in Christ. Then you have the Star of David, which again is the sixth. It comes down to the same stuff as the cube and all this other stuff. But we see it because the six is a connection point of expressing heaven on earth. That's why it's associated with so much. But that's also why so many dark-siders like to use it, because it's an expression of the spiritual realm on the physical realm. And when you're dealing with spirits, you need some kind of gate for them to come through. So that's why we have to watch these things. So that's the basic form that I started with. So does that make sense? I haven't explained that to anyone else, so I hope it makes sense. Because then I went and complicated things. I'm not going to explain all that. That goes through all the gates around Israel, and that goes through a lot of other fun stuff. That's talking about the seen and unseen, the inside, the outside, up and down. I'm not going to go through all that today. But if you want me to explain it later, talk to me. And that's all my slides for now, so we can put that over there. So, are we on overload yet? Okay, because I still got half of my notes. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. Okay. So, and again, that second one I showed you was how to bring it back down. That's why the gates are there. That's how you go up to heaven through the first one. The rest of it is to walk back down and bring into manifestation the rest of it. That's my method. There's plenty of others. And Holy Spirit will lead you through your own. So let's talk about application. How do we apply this stuff? one of my favorite ways to explain it, and you guys probably haven't heard this because I came up with it like a couple of days ago. So it's one of my favorites now, is the example of a song. So we all go to worship services on Sundays. We all know the song service. So let's just break down one song. You have the lyrics, you have the melody, you have the rhythm or the bass line. Just as a side note, if you look real closely, the lyrics are like a picture it brings to your mind. The melody is the sound that's coming out and resonating with creation around you. That's why if you ever hear me praying on a Sunday morning with the worship team, you'll often hear me say that I'm opening our gates and that the walls are welcome to sing with us, because the walls resonate, just like that plate that we saw in the video. It resonates with the sound of our voice, as well as the echo chambers of our lungs inside our rib cage. We're the temple, so every sound that we make is resonating throughout the whole temple of God. That's why whenever you look at Solomon's temple, the two pillars on the front, they're made to where they could conduct electricity, but the tops of them were bronze, hollow, and they were covered with what they call pomegranates, which are little bronze balls on a chain. So when the wind blew, it would rattle against that bronze and create a bell sound, create a resonance. Even whenever the high priest came before God on the Day of Atonement, he had to have a bell on his belt, because it says that, what's the verse? But it says that he has to have the bell so that God doesn't strike him down, because you won't approach before me without a sound. I'll have to find the verse later, but I read it the other day and I can't remember where it's at. It's somewhere in Exodus or in one of those. So you have that. And then you have the rhythm, which is the count or the numbers. So just like we have in the Hebrew letters, you have the symbol, which is a picture, the sound, and the number. You have the melody, the lyrics, and the rhythm. So it's kind of interesting that way. But anyways, so we use lyrics to convey the imagery or the substance of that song. What are we singing about? Because Amazing Grace and House of the Rising Sun can go to the same melody, but the words change the song completely. It changes the whole imagery of that song. We use the melody to stir up the emotion, to guide the flow of the song. So that's the part that always gets stuck in your head. That's the part that always clicks with you. You either have one phrase of a song in the lyrics that gets stuck in your head, or the melody, which is that whistling tune. But the reason it's connected with you is because that emotion is triggering it to come back into your mind. So that's why the sad songs cause you to be sad. That's why the happy songs make you be happy. It's because it's designed to trigger what emotion the artist put into it whenever they were writing it. And then the rhythm, which is the bass line, it's the drums, it's all of these things, give it the weight and the movement to go forward. You never hear a drum solo in reverse. But you also don't get... whenever I was in youth at our old church, there was fine arts. And we'd always go to... Well, not always, but occasionally we'd go to the drum solo room, where they were competing as just drums in the room. You had the set, they did their 5-minute drum solo, and then they got rated on that. And every time I go in there, about halfway through whatever performance it was, I forgot the first half of the song, because there was no substance in it. It was just the rhythm driving forward. So you had all of that emotion to build and the crescendo at the end, but then you came away like, okay, what was the point of that? Because there was no substance there. It was just a bass line. It was just a drum. So there was a lot of movement. There's a lot of engagement, but then nothing. So whenever you're putting a song together, you need all three. You need the imagery, you need the melody, you need the rhythm, because lyrics by themselves is a poem, and it has a lot of meaning. A lot of people can connect with the lyrics themselves. A melody by itself is like Mozart. It's like all of these piano solos. It's beautiful, and it sticks with you, and it's emotional. But you come away saying that's a pretty song. Where's the substance? When you put those two together, you have a singer-songwriter, this melody, guitar, piano, and you have the lyrics, and it's a great song, but most of the times those drag on. There's not a lot of weight to it. It's saying something beautifully, but it's not saying something with oomph, for lack of better words. You don't feel that impact unless they really slam on the piano and get that bass note in there. But even the bass note doesn't have a lot of weight until you put drums on it, or you put melody, bass line to it with the melody of that. Because when you put bass and melody together, then you get that full emotional connection without the substance of that. So you need all three parts. Okay, so now we have that song put together. So picture a worship song, just any of them. Holy is Our King by Rick Pino. You have that piano melody coming in, building up, and then right before the lyrics start, it drops that big heavy bass line, and the big drums come in and fill out that whole sound. And then you have Rick start singing just after that, where it comes back down and softens a little bit. So you have that whole emotional connection drops into the imagery. And you have that Holy is Our King. And that's one of the most powerful songs I hear played a lot of times, is just because of that connection. And it's all about what it's all about. It's not about the person in the room. It's not about where you're at. It's not about what came into that week. It was all about Holy is Our King. And that's where the substance really fills in. But you put that next to Come On Up by Steve Swanson. It kind of breaks it because the flow isn't there. There's no connection between the two songs. So the structure of the song is great, but you have to structure the songs together in concert. That's why it's in concert. Otherwise, it's discord. So you need to structure them all together and make sure that they build with each other, not build separate from each other. Because if you put Come On Up before Holy is Our King, then you have that invitation of the substance of it. The lyrics are all, come on up, I want to show you some stuff. And then it fades out, and then you have that build up from Rick Pino going into Holy is Our King, and you're coming up to his level. And when you get up there, you're beholding the holy. You're beholding the throne room. You're beholding, that's the structure of it, is to put it all together so that it flows together, so that you can experience the whole thing. Because a song service without emotion, without substance, without that flow, just does not work. I mean, we've all been there. We've all seen it. It's like, it just doesn't work. There's not, even whenever you just take the drums out of it and you have all hymns, the hymns can be great. But if you're singing about the rapture in one and, oh, woe is me in the other, it doesn't, I mean, the substance is there. You're wanting to get out of here. But you can get out of here up, or you can get out the door. I mean, pick one. So you have to figure out what your intention in putting these songs together is. Because the intention, like oftentimes on a Thursday or a Tuesday night, either Debbie or Laura come to me and we start working on what songs we're going to play for that session, that service, whatever you want to call it. But we'll always sit there until we get some kind of direction. Direction being, what's the intention of what we're putting together? What are we trying to do? Is there a song? Okay, what songs fit with that? Is there a word? Holy. Okay, so these are the songs that fit holy. Which one of these resonates with your spirit? Which one of these you feel something with? It's not hard. It's like, what do you feel something? If you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. That's the whole point. Because a song is meant to feel. Because if the whole point of praise and worship is to engage you, body, soul, spirit, so that your whole being is engaging with the beings around you, whether they be physical or whether you be in your bathroom, fixing your hair, singing a song. The angels that are with you are going to be singing that song with you. So it's all about engaging fully. Because if you're standing still, you ain't dancing. If you're humming along, you're not singing, you're humming. There's a point to each thing, but there's a time for humming as well. And soapbox time. That's why the tambourine is such a big thing. Because it's one of those things, it's bells put together on a frame so that it's a percussive percussion instrument. So the bells cause a melody and a sound in that high frequency which shatters whatever is there. The percussion is that rhythm. It's all together. So whenever you're adding that to lyrics, you have a whole band in one. But that's why it's so devastating when it's out of time or out of place. Because it's shattering everything around and it's causing discord with what's being put forward. So there's a time and a place for it. And a tambourine in time with the drums is amazing. I always love seeing it on the drummer's rack because it has some that you can mount. You can hit it when you do your hi-hats, you hit it, and it works. But whenever you put cowbell in the wrong place, oh no. So the structure is the idea of my intention is I want to do this. How do I do it in the most effective and most purposeful way possible so that the expression expresses properly? Because mixed expressions don't come across well. I mean, you can hear how well my words are working whenever I'm trying to stumble over them. It doesn't work. But whenever I take a second to breathe, get that fresh movement, get that fresh infilling of inspiriting, then it comes out. So the idea is to create a structure, to build and frame something so that your expressions come out in the intended form. And it brings all of the elements that you're using together for that manifestation. So if you have your paints in red, blue, and green, you can mix them to make other colors. You can use different kinds of paints that they dry at different times and have different effects. But until you have an image in your head and a canvas to work on, the painting will never come together. So first figure your image. Experience it for yourself. If you're painting a landscape and you haven't been there, I talk to my dad all the time about art. And one of my favorite things to do is say, okay, now what's beyond this picture? He's painting one where it's an alleyway. I'm like, okay, what's in that room around the corner? Is there a lamp down there or is it just a dark room? Because if it's just a dark room, then this is the end of the alley and we now have this lighting source. But if you're going around there, you can have this little bit of shade back here and give depth to it. So you have more to explore. If you're going out to a waterfall, what does the air taste like? Is it fresh? Is it clean? Is it cool? Is it warm? Because he painted a sunrise. And it's like all these trees and just rays of light coming through. I'm like, okay, so you can see the shift between the blue shades and the red shades. But have you experienced the moss on that rock, which it's our grandparents' place, so we felt the moss on it. So you can feel that earthiness in the air. You can feel the wetness of that mist from the waterfall. If you experience it and get in your head, that's one of the most beautiful paintings I've seen of a waterfall because it's so deep. There's so much emotion that's put into it, so much experience that's in it. And that's the point, is the more experience and emotion you put into something, the more powerful it becomes. So like my Post-it notes, it worked the most on me and Vicky because Vicky knows energy and she knows the flow. I know the structure, so I know what it's for. But whenever I told her what it's for, didn't it compound the action? So she felt it more whenever she knew what it was about. That's the point of a structure. It's a vehicle for you to put your intention into so that it can be expressed in the manifest world. It's kind of like a seed. We all want to, other soapbox. We all say that we're kings and priests, right? I might get hurt for this one. We're not all kings, okay? The purpose of being a king is to enforce the laws of the kingdom. The purpose of doing that is so that you take on the responsibility of that kingdom. Do you really want all of heaven relying on you right now with how much you know about heaven? Just think about it. I mean, how much do you want all of Sonic to rely on you to make their orders, even though you've never worked there a day in your life? It's the same idea. You have to learn the protocols and the laws. So we talk a lot about the law of sowing and reaping and the principle of sowing. A law is what is written out to express a principle so that you can now activate it. So the law of sowing and reaping is that when you sow, it will be given back to you. Pressed down, shaken, together, running over. That's in the scripture. The principle is the principle of the seed. God in the beginning created each seed with the fruit after its own kind. So whenever you're sowing a car, you will reap in transportation. When you are sowing in money or wealth, you will reap in wealth. Okay. So, the purpose of structures is to create a vehicle to manifest your intentions. There's no requirements to use them except knowing what you're doing and trying to do it. Just like a word out of place and out of order brings the wrong results to manifest, so it is with all structures. You say the wrong word in the wrong place, your whole sentence is ruined. You do the wrong thing in the wrong place, your whole day is ruined. The same goes with every structure. Using a screwdriver to hammer a nail kind of defeats the purpose of having a hammer. You got to use both. You got to use the right tool for the right job. Intentions must be expressed to manifest. Just like love is an expression, it's never to be held in. Light is an expression, it's never to be held in. It defeats the purpose if it's held in. Love held to itself is pride. Light held to itself is darkness because it's no longer an outraying. You need to express to manifest. Just like God expressed his intentionality in the beginning to create, all of creation is an expression of God. That's why God is in all and is all. But that's not saying that God is creation itself. It's saying that creation is a part of God himself. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's up to you to choose the proper tool for the job. So, all good? Okay. Any questions?